Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back for part 9 of our tower defense tutorial. We are getting pretty close to kind of like the finishing line of our game. So what I want to set up now is let's set up kind of the rules of our game. Like normally you would say like how is a winner decided, stuff like that. Let's set up kind of like those like basic rules. So there's some different ways of doing this. If your game is only going to be single player, you can pretty much set up how you want the rules of your game and stuff. You can set that up however you would like, wherever you want, and there's probably no sin involved. However, when you start to deal with multiplayer, you start to deal with things like the game state, the game instance, the game mode. You start to deal with a lot of different states, and with that, you need to be careful about where you put things. I don't believe I would be a very good teacher to teach multiplayer. While I have done some multiplayer in games, I don't think I am in a place to teach it. I don't really feel comfortable to do so. So what I'm going to do is we're going to set up what I think is the proper way to set this up for multiplayer, but I'm not going to really talk about too much about why. We have not set up so far. Any of our game is not set up to be replicated for multiplayer. I guess I should restate that. We have not set anything up to be set for multiplayer, but where we're going to put this, kind of the rules of the game, I believe are where they should go for when you do a multiplayer game. But just know, if you're doing a single player game, you can literally do it however you want. There is going to be zero issues with that. But once you start to do multiplayer, you need to start being careful, and if you plan on doing a multiplayer game, you really need to start learning up on it. You cannot just learn from tutorials about how to do multiplayer. You really need to learn it and master it, because there is a lot of discretion involved with multiplayer coding. So what I'm going to do is I want to create a new game, I think it's a game mode, I think is what we want here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blueprint class. I'm just going to do this in our overarching content folder. I'm going to make a new blueprint class, and I believe we want a new game mode base. If we highlight game mode, it defines the game being played. It governs the game's rules, scoring, what actors are allowed to exist, so on and so forth. If you read under that, it says it is only instanced on the server and will never exist on the client. This is for multiplayer. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that when you start to get with multiplayer, these things start to matter. Where this exists, where it doesn't exist, who runs it, who doesn't run it, that all is multiplayer. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this into game mode, and that's where I think it should be for multiplayer reasons, but for single player reasons, you could really put this in a variety of places. So we're going to make a new game mode, and we're going to call this our tower defense game mode. And then what we want to do is we want to open it up, and I believe on the right side we should have some defaults. What we want to do is we want to change our player controller to be the player controller we made, so the TD player controller. We want our default pawn to be, I believe we called it character player camera pawn. And did we set up anything else? I think we just set up those two things. We set up a default player controller and a default player pawn, and I think that should work there. And from there, we need to do edit, project settings, and under game, or maps and modes, you can see it's on the top down game mode by default. We need to set it to the new one, and we want it to be our tower defense game mode. And I believe if we now just start playing our game, I think everything should be working exactly the same. Nothing should be changed here. Everything should be perfect. We should be able to create our towers. We should be able to spawn. So far, all we've done is swapped out our game mode, but nothing should really be affected by that. So what we want to do now is inside of our game mode, what we want to do is we want to create kind of the rules of the game. So simply what I really care about is the lives. I think that's all we really care about, is how many player lives. If you want your game to behave differently, say you wanted your enemies to run to the end, and at the end you had like a core, and you wanted the enemies to attack your core, you would handle that a bit differently. You would want to make an actor that is your core. You would want to set up the AI to where once they get to the end of the path, they stop running around and they start targeting that actor and start hitting it. We're not going to set that up here. For us, we're just going to be concerned about them getting to the end and doing this. But I think what you would still do is if your game was multiplayer, you would still run a little bit of that data through this game mode. But once again, if your game's single player, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. So yeah, so for us, we are concerned about them getting to the end of the game. So what we want to do is we should we do an overlap? Let's see. So what we'll want to do now is we want to calculate how do we know when the runners get to the end of the path. I think we could do a simple overlap. I think that would be fair. I'm trying to think, is there a more intuitive way or a different way we could set that up? Um, I don't really think so. I guess that would be a little bit too much in my liking. Could we do it that way? So maybe we'll actually do something a little complex. Since our spawner handles some of this stuff, like our spawner handles the starting location of our runners and the ending location, I'm actually curious, can we set up a little bit of something fancy here? We're going to use the construction script, and that might be good to touch on because I think a lot of people don't understand, or at least beginners really don't understand it. It took me a very long time before I was willing to touch the construction script. We're going to use that. So what I want to do is I obviously want to use an overlap event to know when our enemies, to get to know when our runners get to the endpoint. So let's add a new component. We are going to get a collision cube, a box collision. We're going to use that. I think I'm pretty okay with that. We'll see the sizing in a bit. Let's set this to be not hidden. So let's be able to see this in our game. We will call this box, let's just call it, we'll rename it. Normally I don't rename my collision boxes, but we'll do it here. We'll call it finish line. Or finish line. Good typing. And now what we want to do is let's dynamically set this overlap box. Let's set it dynamically to be the location of our end location. So I believe what we can simply do is that the construction script, let's explain this. The construction script, this will run, if we highlight it, what does it say? Is the place to spawn components, so it's not really telling us much about it. This will run whenever we make changes to this actor. Whenever we make changes to this actor inside of the editor, so if I were to drag our spawner, if I were to change something, the construction script would run. I believe the construction script also runs at the first tick of our actor. I believe it also runs then. There's some more cases for it, but really this construction script is meant to be used while you're working inside the editor, or at least that's how I view it. We can do some dynamic procedural generation stuff inside of this, but for our reasons, inside of the editor, we just want to make sure that that overlap box that we can see right here, this tiny thing, just snaps to our end location. So really, on the construction script, all I really want to do is get our finishing line and set its location, let's set the local location, set relative location, and we can just punch in the relative location of our end location, and I believe it should instantly snap over there. So let's see, if I hit compile, it should run. It's not showing it for some reason, but that should run, and if we look, our box has disappeared, and you can see our overlap box has teleported to our end location. So I believe if I move this at all, you can see our box stays with it. So that's really what the construction script is for. You do not want to put any of your gameplay elements on construction script. No bueno, don't do that. You only want to be putting code that you want to be ran kind of very purposefully inside the construction script. If you're never sure, like, I don't know if this goes in the construction script, the answer is probably no. But know that you can use this for more procedural generation of stuff. You can use this for like dynamic creation. It's basically to help you work inside of the editor. If we were making a different type of game, I would probably show you some of the procedural way of generating stuff, but for a tower defense, we really don't need it. I think I just want to make that overlap box maybe a little bit bigger. So let's go in the viewport and let's make its X and its Y just slightly bigger. Let's actually do the Z too, just for the heck of it. And now let's look back. So I'm happy with that. That's a nice end location. So what we can do now is we can check what enters our overlap box. So with this overlap box, if we click it, this is a different way of doing it. I've usually shown you right-clicking and do add event collision on overlap. If we select the finishing, or our overlap, if we just scroll all the way down, we can see all the events, and we can do on begin overlap. Let's click it, and just as we've been doing, I feel like this should be really self-explanatory. We want to cast it to be to our runner. We just want to make sure, hey, that you're one of our runners, and if you are one of our runners, then we want to destroy that actor because we want it to disappear, and then along with destroying it, we want to communicate to our game mode, or not a top-down game mode, but our tower defense game mode. We want to communicate about lives. So what we'll do is we will call over to our game mode, and what we're actually going to do is we will create a custom event for this. We will create a custom event, and we will call it lower lives, or lower lives. I think lives works. Plural, yeah. So what we want to do is lower lives. We will take our lives, and we will do minus minus, and we will, not minus, we want to do minus minus decrement. The opposite of incrementing is decrementing, which means we will subtract 1 from lives and then set lives to be equal to that value. It's literally the exact same as doing subtract and then doing set lives. That code is literally the same exact. This right here these 3 nodes is the same as these 2 nodes, just a little bit cleaner to do it this way. And what we will do is after we lower our lives by 1, what we will do is we will do a branch, and we will check to see, hey, is our lives less than or equal to 0? If it is less than or equal to 0, we will run whatever we want here. And I don't know if I really want to set up too much off of this. I think what we will just simply do is we will create a UI. We'll do a widget, and we'll just call this you lose widget or something like that. And we will just pop up this widget dead center of the screen. We can create a text, and we will make this font like really big. Let's see here. Where's the font? It is under color and appearance. Or no, font, there it is. And let's make this size like 50. We'll make this huge. And we will just have this make fun of the player and say like, LOL, you lose. We'll have it like really be tilting. Set that in the center of the screen. Once again, let's just take our canvas. We'll wrap with a size box, then wrap with a scale box. This is something that I would really just get in the habit of doing. This is really good to do for your code. It just makes it so that this will always be sized to our screen. And with that, we can put that in the center of our screen. And then on our game losing code, on true, we can just do create widget. And with that create widget, we will create the you lose widget, and we will just add it to our viewport. So add to viewport. And with that, we can add it to the center of our screen when we lose the game. And what we're just going to do is we're going to set our lives down to be 1 so that the first enemy that we let through, we will pop that onto our screen and the game will end. So let's try that out. So we'll hit spawn waves. We'll let our runners run through the level. And then when they hit that ending point, it should disappear that runner, and a big widget on our screen should laugh at us. So there we go. Okay, so something did not happen there. So what's not going on? We never called our event. That is right, we never hooked that little piece of code up. We made our custom event, but we never called it. So let's go over to our spawner, where we are having the overlap where we're dealing with the runner. And I believe what we can do is we can get game mode. And with get game mode, we need to cast it to the game mode we created, which would be our tower defense game mode. And then with this, we can call our custom event of lower lives. And now, if we run that one more time, we should be all set up. Let's spawn our waves. We can watch our runners run through, and now when they hit that end box, the runners should disappear, our lives should lower, and since we only have 1 life, I believe it should laugh at us immediately. It is not. So let's check it one more time. Let's see what's going wrong here. So on our spawner, our game mode is coming back, that our game mode is still the top-down game mode. So why is that? If we look under our defaults, I believe we changed our default over. So if we go under our maps and modes, our default game mode is the tower defense game mode. Let's see, is it getting overridden? So if we go under our world settings, you can see there is a game mode override. That is an issue. If we turn this game map override to none, that should stop overriding our game mode. Sometimes that is set to default, so let's play this one more time and hopefully it works. So our runners will run through the level. Hopefully this time it will destroy the runner, we will lose a life, and the game will laugh at us. So let's see, and perfect. So there we go. So that is just a simple way of setting up our lives. The reason why we set it up inside the game modes is because this is normally where you would handle your game rules, if you want to call it that. Once again, if you're doing a single player game, you can really do this anywhere. I don't really want to handle too much what happens when you lose, because that's completely up to your game. Whether you want it to pop up some restart widgets to give the player the ability to restart, you want to show their score, that's up to you, but this is kind of like the basis of it. You have your lives. When the lives disappear, you can laugh at the player. And I would challenge you, say you have a boss that spawns. If you go inside of our runner table where we have our waves all be separate, we can make maybe the wave where we only spawn 2 runners, maybe we want them to lower the lives even more. So what we can do is, the last thing we'll do this video is we'll do that real quick. So we'll set up a new variable, we'll make it an integer, and we will call this life deduction, and we will make it so that each runner can have its own amount of lives that it reduced the level by. And then what we'll do is we'll go inside of our table real quick, we'll make it so that the first wave reduces the lives maybe by 1, second wave by 5, the third wave maybe by like 2. You can do this however you'd like. Inside of our runner, what we want to do is we want to store a variable for life reduction also, and that will make that an integer. And then when we spawn our runner inside of our spawner, just as we've done everything else off of the cast, we want to do set life reduction. And then if we look back at our, let's move that right a little bit, and if we put that here, and then we hook this up into our data table, now we have our runners dynamically, at least now their lives are set, but then there's one last thing we need to do. On this lower lives, we want to tell the game mode how many lives we're reducing it by. So let's go inside of our game mode real quick. And what we want to do is we want to create an input off of this custom event. Right here, if we select our event on the top right, we have inputs. We can set that to be an integer, and we can say reduce lives by. And then what we could do is that instead of doing this decrement integer that we had before, we can do subtraction. We can do set lives. Let's delete that decrement. And now if we hook it up, we can reduce the lives by the amount that we call through this event. And that now on the other side of this event where we're calling it inside of the spawner, you will see that we have reduced lives by. What we want to do is off of our runner, so when the runner overlaps with our finishing line, out of that runner, we can now get the life reduction amount, and we can reduce our lives by that amount. And now dynamically, each of our runners or each of our waves can reduce our lives by a different amount. So I think that sets up the rules of our game. That was a nice short 15-minute video. And I think from here on out, because now we have the basis of our game set up, we can start the waves when we want, we can create towers when we want. I think from here on out, we're just going to be doing a bunch of random kind of optional flavors to the game. We'll set up, say, currency, and we'll make it so that each tower costs a certain amount, and that on kill we get currency. Maybe we'll even set up experience inside of towers, and we'll have our towers level up. Maybe we'll set up some upgrades and that we can upgrade our towers. So from here on out, we're just going to be touching a lot of random subjects and just be doing a lot of random functionality, so that maybe some of them will be useful for you, and that hopefully you'll learn something. So I think we're only a few more videos away before we're done, guys, so I'll see you guys in the next video.